A single dad discovers a crying girl he hired to help is actually a millionaire's hidden daughter. Jake wiped the grease off his hands and stared at the clock on the wall of his cramped mechanic shop. The muted daylight faded into evening, golden hues spilling across the floor, but the weight of responsibility hung heavy on his shoulders. He was a single dad navigating the relentless currents of bills and worries, with only 10-year-old Lily's laughter to anchor him. His heart ached with the thought of failure, of not providing her with the life she deserved. The hum of engines had become his temporary solace, but the joy of fixing cars could never replace the moments he longed to share with his daughter. When Jake hired Emily, a quiet 16-year-old high school tutor, it was for Lily's sake. She seemed shy, often ducking her head as she moved about, her dark hair a curtain hiding the sadness in her eyes. It broke his heart to see her wipe away tears during their sessions together. He wondered what burden she carried that echoed his own struggles and how she came to accept this low-paying job. Their shared silence was familiar, a reflection of their separate battles so different yet so similar. One quiet evening, as they sat on the back porch surrounded by the hum of crickets and the flickering dance of fireflies, Jake ventured to ask Emily about her life. The weight of her response crushed him. She wasn't just a girl who needed a job, she was the estranged daughter of a wealthy businessman, a man who turned his back on his family when they needed him most. The realization hit Jake like a punch to the gut. The world had treated both of them unfairly, and while he fought against the grinding machine of life, she was caught in the crossfire of privilege gone wrong. What did it mean to have a father who walked away? It haunted him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But just as Jake began to process this revelation, everything changed. One sun-drenched afternoon, Emily's father stormed into the neighborhood in his sleek car, the contrast of his tailored suit against the simple grain of their lives strikingly stark. The way he demanded Emily's return twisted something deep inside Jake. A primal instinct to protect surged through him, rising with each arrogant word from that man's mouth. It was a battle of worlds' hard-earned grit against cold, calculated privilege. Jake looked at Emily, her face pale and eyes wide with fear as her father loomed. The anger in his gut was boiling, and he stood frozen, tinged with desperation. This was supposed to be a moment of joy, a chance to shield her from her father's tyranny. But the choice loomed over him like storm clouds: stand by and risk losing another opportunity for Emily, or take a stand and defy the shadow of wealth. Their eyes locked, a silent plea wrapped in anguish binding them together. He reached for her trembling hands, his resolve locking in place. But in that heart-stopping second, as the confrontation escalated, Jake could only see one thing: the torrents of insecurity, longing, and uncertainty about what lay ahead. Would he have the courage to protect her, or would he watch another chance slip away into the hands of fate? As Jake grasped Emily's hands, his heart thundered in his chest, drowning out the hostile words from her father. A surprising surge of determination coursed through him. This wasn't just about her, it was about forging their paths, finding strength where they had always felt weakness. He couldn't let semantics dictate Emily's future, nor could he allow fear to warp the bond they'd formed, however fragile it might be. "You're not going anywhere with him," Jake declared, his voice steady despite the rapid flutter of nerves inside him. He took a step forward, blocking the path between Emily and her father. Each word weighed heavy with conviction, challenging the authority of the man whose wealth had built walls around their lives. "What do you think you're doing, you pathetic mechanic?" Her father scoffed, eyes narrowing in disdain. "You can't possibly understand what you're standing in the way of. She's my daughter." And in that moment, Jake perceived the layers of their entangled lives. He merely stood at the threshold of a potential fight, he was making a stand against the generational cycles that whispered defeat and submission to both of them. "I understand her better than you ever could." She deserves choice. She deserves a say in her life. Jake could see doubt flickering in Emily's eyes, a tumult of fear and longing. He had to hold his ground not just for her, but to confront the silent shadows of his own existence. To be a better father than the one who had let him down. With each measured breath, he thought of Lily. He couldn't allow himself to falter. "Emily," he urged gently, turning his gaze to her. "What do you want?" Her voice trembled, barely above a whisper, but it hit him with clarity. "I want to stay. I want to help Lily. It's nice here." The defiance in her admission provided a flicker of hope. Even amid a storm, she could still find a place where she felt accepted. Jake turned back to her father, feeling the weight of both their decisions in his hands. This wasn't just about defiance, it was about the construction of boundaries and identity. "Let her stay," he challenged, grounding himself in the reality of her choice. "You can't just reclaim someone because you want control. She has a right to decide for herself." The businessman's brow furrowed, caught in the net of unexpected resistance. Jake noticed a subtle shift. This wasn't easy for him either. If he had ever doubted his instinct to protect Emily, that doubt was ebbing away. Would he really learn from his own past or remain a prisoner to it? "Look at you," her father scoffed, pain laced with bitterness. "You think you can raise her? With the life you've got?" But that question ignited a spark within Jake. His life may not be glamorous, but it's suffused with love and hard-earned integrity. His experiences molded him into someone who could genuinely empathize, someone who understood what it was to want more but still fight for what little was available. "I might not have money, but I have something infinitely more valuable, a home filled with laughter and the knowledge of how to truly struggle." As Emily's father hesitated, the tension hung in the air like the smell of gasoline. Jake could feel the moment evolving, almost like a delicate repair on a car that wanted to stall. If he could navigate this situation with the same care he poured into his work, perhaps he could show Emily that she already belonged somewhere. But even as he felt the tides of confrontation shift slightly in their favor, uncertainty whispered behind him. This was a battle, but the war was far from over. Shadows loomed from Emily's past, and now Jake had to consider whether he could maintain the fragile safety they'd begun to build. Would she be ready to face the consequences of this decision? And as he stood his ground, a dark thought stole over him. What if this was only the beginning of a far greater challenge? The air felt thick around Jake, an impending storm echoing in his thoughts. Emily's father squandered no time, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "You're out of your depth, boy. This isn't a game." It was as if a velvet rope wrapped around Jake's heart, tightening, reminding him of the delicate balance he needed to uphold. He wasn't just protecting his space, he was embodying the role he aspired to, a father who fought for his child, for the chance to mold a better future. "I'm not playing," he countered, observing Emily as she tugged at her fingers anxiously. "Rachel." The father's voice dripped with venom, aimed not just at Jake but also piercing the reason for Emily's visit. "This man knows nothing about your possibilities. You think he can offer you anything worth it?" Jake steadied himself, feeling the chill of Emily's father's words seep into his skin. This wasn't just a clash of wills, it was a reiteration of everything Jake fought against. But what was left of the comfort that had cradled his dreams? He had to keep pursuing strength, a resolve deeper than just this moment. Possibilities come with decisions, not just wealth. Emily glanced up at him. Her eyes flickered with a mix of wonder and concern. What did she see in him? It struck him that she was measuring not just their current predicament, but also a potential future not only for herself but for both of them. "You can choose a life with laughter," Jake added, the words cascading from his heart. "Don't let anyone tell you what you deserve." With each passing heartbeat, he could feel an unseen decision forming in Emily's mind. The storm of her past entangled in the careful threads of their unfolding future. "Enough." Her father's voice boomed, slicing through the burgeoning silence. "You're making a mistake telling her those lies." Jake noticed Emily's eyes narrow as she listened, absorbing both perspectives, one filled with constraints and expectation, the other with authenticity and choice. Anxiety knotted deep in Jake's stomach. Did she truly understand the risks? The implications of her standing firm beside him? Maybe you think you can pull her away from everything, her father continued, his tone now surprisingly calm, though it dripped with condescension. But your life is a maze, and she deserves a map. Jake clenched his fists, the wheels in his mind turning furiously. Maps can mislead. This life, he gestured vaguely around him, it's not about the destination, it's about how you get there. Silence rippled through the room, buzzing with urgency, an unspoken question lingering. Could Emily reject the mapping of her father's wealth? Could she genuinely choose the path toward struggle laced with laughter? I stuck with my dreams, he offered softly, when life was at its toughest. I will help you, Emily. You won't be alone. And there it was, like a deep breath after a long period underwater. The weight of anxiety began to empty from her features. Would she trust him? Could she take that leap of faith? The lingering quiet broke as uncertainty turned into resolve. I want my own choices, she said finally, her voice firm and steady. A flicker of pride ignited in Jake's chest. It was her first step into independence, yet shadows still obscured the path. Her father's presence loomed like an unshakable figure, intimidating and powerful. Remember, Rachel, he warned, tilting his head. You will regret this. You'll realize you're just making a poor decision. Jake felt icy dread surge through him. How could he safeguard Emily from this darkness that encroached on their decision? He needed to cultivate more than just resilience, he had to devise a way forward, to reframe their narrative within this shifting maze. The frail hints of laughter seemed to echo in his mind, but tangible solutions lay just out of reach. With whispered revelations hung in the air, questions about his own past surfaced. Could he genuinely be a father who shielded not just from physical danger but from the heavy weight of emotional legacy? Suddenly, a realization crashed over him. The battle wasn't just against her father, it was finding ways to lift Emily up, even as the burdens of families and expectations threatened to pull them apart. He had to dig deeper, to confront the whispers of his lineage and decide what kind of man he would be. But as he braced himself for the unexpected pushback from Emily's father, a single question flared hot in his mind. What lengths would he go to protect her? The tension in the room hung thick like the last remnants of a storm cloud, palpable and suffocating. Jake's instincts buzzed internal alarms that warned him that standing still would only further trap him in Emily's father's web of control. He recognized now that their safety and future hinged not just on Jonathan's vocal attacks, but on his own ability to navigate the situation with both strength and strategy. As he stood between Jonathan and Emily, Jake felt the surge of adrenaline forcing him to think clearly. He needed to be more than a barrier, he had to become their guiding compass. Choices swirled around him like shifting tides. The undeniable reality was that while Emily found her voice, her father would undoubtedly retaliate, challenging their budding resolve with even sharper barbs. In that moment, a new determination knitted together the fraying strands of his purpose. Jake's past was littered with challenges that had tested his mettle, but never had he faced an obstacle so intertwined with someone else's fate, a child's fate. He couldn't afford to respond with anger or despair, those were traps he'd fallen into before. Instead, he needed a plan, a way to shift the power dynamics in this tense standoff. Emily's choices are her own, he stated firmly, directing his energy toward her father while maintaining eye contact with the girl beside him. We'll figure this out together, he whispered to Emily, an assurance mixed with urgency. You're not alone in this. While the older man seethed with indignation, Jake tapped into the depth of his own story. Lost dreams and moments of isolation had forged resilience within him. He could almost hear the echo of his past failures. Each regret had sculpted him into someone willing to challenge authority when it threatened the innocent. Could he channel that into an actionable approach? As Jonathan prepared to speak again, Jake took a deep breath, marshaling his frustrations into something constructive. None of us are bound by our past, sir. You think she needs a map, but Emily deserves the chance to discover her own path, mistakes and all. You cannot dictate happiness, you can only foster an environment that allows for it. The words hung in the air between them, an uncharted territory floating atop a timid heartbeat. In the silence that descended, he could sense Emily observing him more closely, a testament to the gravity of his declaration. Perhaps this was the opportunity for him to redefine not only their relationship but his own narrative as well. Trust can be a fragile thing, Jake continued, pushing through the discomfort gnawing at his throat. But I believe in her intelligence, in her will to thrive. If she chooses to break away from expectations, it's no reflection of failure, it's an embrace of potential. Somewhere in that exchange, Jake felt a flicker of hope, not just for Emily, but for himself. The stakes of fatherhood, the responsibility of carving out new territories against the backdrop of fearful legacies, suddenly felt like a challenge he could meet head-on. He grasped the enormity of his ambitions. This was about more than just Emily, it was about what he would stand for. With Jonathan's face growing increasingly contorted with rage and disbelief, Jake sensed an impending eruption. But in the midst of the storm, a decision crystallized: he would face this disturbance without retreating, planting his feet resolutely in the ground. Emily's future is not something you can dictate, and if I have to take a stand, even if it means standing alone, I will. Because I believe every child deserves more than just a map, they deserve the freedom to draw their own borders. And with each word, Jake felt like he was not just defending Emily, but sculpting his own identity, a father fighting fiercely in a world fraught with obstacles. As the air thickened with tension, Jonathan's fury erupted into a booming laugh, shaking his head in disbelief at Jake's final assertion. Such bravado! You really think you can challenge me? The consequences will come, boy. Jake braced himself as he met the unnerving intensity in Jonathan's gaze, knowing that from this moment on, the game had changed irrevocably. The real dichotomy began now, not just for Emily's liberation but for the path Jake needed to forge for himself, but it was the weight of Jonathan's warning that lingered ominously, a reminder echoing inside Jake's mind: what price would he have to pay for this kind of freedom? And as each second elongated, the answer seemed chillingly out of reach. The laughter that escaped Jonathan's mouth was a sharp blade, cutting through the palpable silence. Jake could feel the hostility radiating from the older man, a dangerous mixture of disbelief and wrath. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to cower, yet the fierce determination within him stole that instinct away. He had come too far to turn back now. Emily's grip tightened on his arm, her fingers cold but resolute. He felt an odd fusion of fear and strength coursing through him, a reminder that this conflict was not solely his own. He represented more than just his desires. He'd become an advocate for Emily, a shield against those who sought to imprison her spirit. The realization was monumental, redefining an identity he had barely begun to comprehend. Consequences? Jake repeated, voice steady, as if tasting the word. He refused to let Jonathan's threats freeze his resolve. I welcome whatever consequences arise from standing up for what's right. A parent's role is to protect. Each word was carefully chosen, a deliberate strike against the patriarch's authority. Jonathan's face paled momentarily, surprise flickering in his eyes like a candle flame forced into an unyielding gust. It was a small victory, one that suggested vulnerability beneath the facade of terror he wielded. It was this crack in the armor that Jake sought to exploit, not just for himself, but in the hopes of inspiring Emily. He needed her to witness the possibility of defiance. Let us not pretend this is about consequences for me, Jonathan countered, words slow with malice. This is about you meddling in things that don't concern you. She belongs under my guidance, not yours. I'm afraid you're wrong. Guidance doesn't mean control, it means encouraging autonomy, Jake countered, the adrenaline surging through him like a newfound power source. He could see both Jonathan's irritation and cracks in his confidence, and it emboldened him more. Your control is suffocating her. Emily's eyes widened, a flicker of hope igniting within them, and for the first time since the confrontation began, she released a brief, almost imperceptible smile. This was not merely about removing Jonathan's chokehold on Emily's life, it was a revelation for both of them about what strength truly meant. But beneath that small victory, doubt festered like an unyielding shadow. How far would Jonathan go? Could he retaliate in a way that would endanger their fragile new understanding? This thought gnawed at Jake's mind, yet he took comfort in the idea that bravery was not the absence of fear, but the resolve to act despite it. "Mark my words," Jonathan said, voice low and threatening, "there is a line you're crossing, boy. This city dances to my tune. I will not have you disrupting my rhythm." Jake steadied his breath, marshalling inner strength. "And I'm not afraid to dance to my own tune and to help Emily find hers." As the final syllables echoed in the room, a newfound clarity washed over him. He could no longer be a mere bystander, a passive participant in a dangerous game. The path ahead demanded action, decisiveness. He could feel it growing within him like the swell of an approaching tide, but it wasn't just about standing his ground, it was also about strategizing how best to protect Emily in this escalating battle. He understood that the next step would require more than bravado. It was time for a deeper exploration of alliances, perhaps even within unexpected networks. However, just as clarity dawned, a frigid reminder surged through the back of his mind: he was alone. How could he combat a man with resources and influence far beyond his own? Jake glanced briefly at Emily, who remained steady at his side, and he could not help but wonder, was she truly ready for the turbulent journey ahead? Could she awaken and harness her own dormant strength, as he desperately wished to do? Their shared resolve need not exist in isolation, instead, they had the potential to empower each other. As Jonathan turned towards the door, a calculated sneer settling into the corners of his mouth, Jake felt a fire ignite within him, urging action. "You may have the power, but we have determination. This isn't over." With that unyielding stance, Jake could see the road ahead, a path not merely fraught with conflict, but one rich with the promise of growth, resolution, and perhaps, newfound connections. In the ensuing silence, as Jonathan's presence faded, Jake's heart raced with the intoxicating thrill of possibility, but with confidence simmering just below the surface, a terrible question loomed: what would it take to convert strategy into success? In that moment, the stakes escalated, and the answer remained maddeningly elusive. The lingering weight of Jonathan's threats hung in the air like a storm cloud. Jake could feel his heart racing, but beneath the flutter of uncertainty surged an undeniable current of purpose. Emily's presence tethered him to this moment, transforming what could have been a retreat into a catalyst for action. He turned to her, searching her face for a roadmap to navigate the tumultuous waters ahead. "I will fight for you," he promised quietly, grounded by a sense of responsibility that felt almost sacred. Though his mind spun with uncertainty, something deeper within him stirred, an instinct to become not just a protector but also an ally who could help her discover her own strength. Emily's voice was a soft thread, fragile yet charged with the electricity of unspoken fears. She was staring at the ground, her fingers curling into a fist. "We need a plan," Jake said, steering them away from the heavy haze of Jonathan's intimidation. He recognized that their only offense against Jonathan's dominance was strategy. Knowledge and alliances could be their greatest allies. But as he glanced around the empty room, a sense of isolation seeped back in. "We'll need support beyond just us two," he continued, taking a step toward the door they had just passed through. "I need to reach out to people I know who care about autonomy, not just control." "What about your job?" Emily countered, her voice steadier now, curiosity shining through the uncertainty. Jake paused, weighing the gravity of her question against the opportunity unfolding before him. The office had become a part of him, a vessel for his ambitions. Yet, with each passing moment, he could feel significance shifting from a solitary climb up the corporate ladder to this urgent, shared mission. "I can't let this go unanswered," he admitted finally, an internal decision crystallizing. "If I risk my job to fight for you, it might actually lead to greater respect inside the company. They need to know I stand for something beyond just myself." Emily's eyes lit up, a glimpse of admiration crossing her features that filled Jake with a warm thrill. He thought about how his decisions had only ever been filtered through a lens of self-preservation. This new horizon felt vast and daunting, but more than ever, He recognized the prospect of evolving from his old self into someone capable of taking real risks for others. They strategized through the evening, mapping out potential allies while Jake prepared for the unexpected conversation with his superiors. He understood the consequences could be dire, the proverbial tides were shifting, and he was willing to step into the unknown because for the first time, his existence felt meaningful. The thought that continued to twist within him was how he might ensure Emily would not only survive Jonathan's grip but also thrive, how to awaken her own voice. That in the early morning light, Jake felt a strange mix of anxiety and hope as he stepped into the office. Each passing face felt like a judgment, but deep down, he knew that this was not just a battle against Jonathan, but a fight for every moment spent fighting against fear. As he initiated his discussions with colleagues and superiors about shifting company values towards autonomy and empowerment, every word came with a spark of conviction. Yet, even as alliances formed under the banner of a new philosophy, he sensed whispers of opposition brewing from Jonathan's camp, an unnerving reminder that the stakes were climbing. Jake's vision for their future apart from Jonathan felt within reach, but so did the rising tension of conflict. He couldn't shake the sensation that we were only at the beginning of this antagonism. What happens when he retaliates? He asked himself quietly, as he resolved to protect Emily while preparing for the inevitable storm that would follow their actions. The moment felt ripe for escalation, and he felt the challenge of turning plans into reality bearing down heavily. Just then, his phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Can you trust me? I think I can help," it read. The looming question hung ominously before him. What secrets had she yet to unveil, and could her revelation reshape everything they were fighting for? Jake's fingers trembled lightly around his phone as he read Emily's message again, searching for an interpretation that provided clarity. What secrets had she yet to unveil, he mused, but a deeper fear nestled within him. The stakes were high. He wasn't just risking his job, but the principles guiding him in a rapidly deteriorating landscape of loyalty and integrity. That he knew he needed to respond, but what if her revelation shifted their foundation? If her past tangled with the power dynamics of Jonathan's ambitions, could they truly leverage it? There was a weight in the unknown too significant to ignore but too uncertain to confront openly. As the hours unraveled, Jake's workday slipped slowly by in a haze, colleagues offering tentative support while others kept their distance, wary of the unfolding drama. His mind oscillated between engaging in strategic conversations and visualizing Emily's next move. He craved her insights, but an underlying apprehension gnawed at him. The more he considered her offer, the more it began to resemble a gamble. That afternoon, when he finally mustered the courage to call her, trepidation hung between them. "What do you mean when you say you can help?" Jake asked, his tone both curious and cautious. Emily inhaled deeply, the pause amplifying the tension. "Jonathan, he won't just go down quietly. But what if I told you I have connections, people who want him out just as much as we do?" Jake's heart raced at the implication. "Are you talking about your family? The ones who?" He hesitated, unnerved by the shift in their reality. "No," she interrupted gently. "Not my family. There are things about my background that I didn't tell you, things that could change the narrative. I believe in you, Jake. I know how powerful you can be when you stand for something." The thought of Emily wielding an influential legacy was intoxicating but daunting. He considered the possibility of her familial connections wielding influence far beyond their immediate grasp. "If you're hiding something, could that backfire on us? On you?" "There's always a risk," she replied, her voice steady. "But hiding isn't living, Jake. We need to confront this directly or we risk losing everything." Jake's resolve pulsed strongly within him, magnified by her perspective. He realized that her journey mirrored his own. He had spent most of his life taking calculated risks, nesting in comfort, but this was different. They were not merely fighting against opposition, they were challenging an abyss of fear toward authenticity. "What do you need from me?" he asked, the words slipping past his reservations. The commitment to her cause tightened around his chest, igniting clarity. "Just be ready to act. Jonathan is smart, but he underestimates us. He doesn't see that we're more than pawns in his game. "We're about to cause a disruption he won't expect," she said, a spark of tenacity lighting her voice, the resolve swelling within him flourished. They were ready to become not just defenders but disruptors, agents of change against Jonathan's authoritarian grip. With each conversation, he felt the embers of his purpose blaze brighter, but Jake couldn't shake the concern: would they be able to navigate this unfolding labyrinth without collateral damage? Were they prepared for the ultimate consequence of Jonathan's retaliation? As evening arrived, with shadows casting deeper upon the walls, the tension within him coiled tightly. They were on the cusp of a transformative shift, not just for themselves but for all those under Jonathan's oppressive reign. Would they possess the courage needed to unmask the shadows looming over them? And just as Jake began to lace together a mental framework of their game plan, a sudden notification flashed on his screen. It was an anonymous tip. "I know about Emily. You might want to be careful." A chill swept through him, unsettling the newfound steadiness. What did this person know? And how was it connected to the turmoil they were igniting? As anxiety coiled around him, Jake stared at the screen in disbelief, feeling the imminent storm brew ahead. Jake's mind reeled as he absorbed the message, the world around him dissolving into a blur of urgency. The warning echoed in his thoughts like an ominous bell tolling in the silence of his office. "I know about Emily. You might want to be careful." Who was this mystery messenger? What did they know? But more pressing was the realization that he was embroiled in something deeper than just his dealings with Jonathan. His pulse quickened, each beat resonating with doubt and a flicker of fear. Emily had thrown him into a whirlpool of precarious decisions. He thought about her unspoken past and the leverage she might possess. Was it even worth it to pursue this path, knowing that secrets could either empower them or be the very downfall he feared? As he stared at the blinking cursor on his screen, Jake resolved to lift the veil shrouding Emily's truth. That he pushed himself to rise from his desk, the chair scraping against the floor a physical reminder of the comfort he was tossing aside. Drawing in a steadying breath, he selected Emily's contact. His finger hovered over the call button, battling the instinct to toss everything aside and retreat into the familiar safety net of mundane office life. "Jake." Her voice crackled over the line, tinted with a mix of anxiety and expectancy. "Emily, we need to talk. Now." Meeting her at a nearby cafe, the atmosphere bristled with unvoiced expectations. They settled into a booth away from prying eyes, the ambient noise swirling around them but fading into the background. Jake wrestled with how to breach the topic while maintaining an air of collaboration. "You mentioned having connections," he started, his voice low and determined. "But what does that really mean? If we're going to fight Jonathan, I want to know what we're really up against. I can't rush in blind." A shadow crossed her face. She looked away, contemplating. "It's complicated. There are people in my life who were involved in the industry, players who know the ins and outs." She paused, weighing her words. "But they're not just any connections. They're people with vested interests, and involving them may come with its own consequences." Jake leaned in, the air thickening with intrigue. "Consequences how? What kind of interests?" "There's a lot of history with my family," she admitted, exhaling a heavy breath. "They've been on the outskirts of power for years. It's a tangled web, Jake. Trusting them could be as hazardous as going head-to-head with Jonathan." Her admission sank in and twisted at something inside him. The deeper he probed, the more these revelations felt like shifting sand beneath his feet. He had been grappling with his own fears of navigating loyalty and betrayal, but now he recognized the possibility that Emily was ensnared in a legacy laden with its own burdens. "Emily, this could alter everything we've been working toward. If your family holds power, we need to carefully consider how we proceed. What if they don't support our fight? What if they pull the rug out from under us?" Jake could see contorted emotions flicker across her face, fierce resolve battling with the shadows of her past. "I've never asked them for help. I've wanted to be my own person, not just a pawn in their game. But maybe that's not enough this time." As they exchanged thoughts, Jake began to see Emily in a new light. She was not merely a companion in this fight, she was a potential leader with her own hurdles to overcome. He realized that his hesitations regarding their plan were interwoven with her hesitations about her past. Maybe we need to take a leap of faith, then, Jake suggested quietly, emboldened by the purpose swelling inside him. Instead of viewing this as a handicap, let us embrace it. We can redefine the narrative that has played out for so long. The flicker of determination in Emily's eyes ignited a spark in him. You're right. But we must act carefully. Trust may be our greatest weapon or our gravest mistake. As they deliberated their next steps, another notification interrupted, drawing Jake's attention back to the reality at hand. His heart dropped as he read the message aloud. I'm not the only one who knows about Emily's past. Be prepared. Someone is watching. A sense of dread swept over them. They were not just facing Jonathan anymore, shadows were closing in from every direction. Jake felt the weight upon him grow heavier as he thought of their next move, intentions forged in fire but fraught with peril. The time was coming. They would need to take charge, to confront what lay ahead with overwhelming conviction. Would they manage to unite their strength, or would they fold beneath the collective burdens of truth and betrayal? As Jake glanced at Emily, he recognized that every day demanded courage, and they were running out of time. Would they emerge stronger together, or would this tangled web pull them apart? As the coffee shop buzzed around them, Jake felt the intensity of the moment urge him to act. The notification hung heavy in the air, a specter haunting their every word. Shadows from Emily's past suddenly felt imminent, the specter of danger veiling their growing plan. Someone's watching us, he said, looking directly into Emily's eyes, searching for assurance in her resolve. Suddenly, he was aware of how crucial trust had become both in their unsteady alliance and the potentially catastrophic decisions looming ahead. We can't let fear dictate our next steps. What options do we have? Emily looked down, twirling the empty spoon in her cup as the silence grew. There are ways to protect ourselves, but they require me to reach out to my family. That's a risk one I'm not sure I'm ready to take. Jake leaned back, processing her words while weighing his own feelings. If you don't, what is left for us? We can't just hide in shadows, waiting for the storm to pass. I don't know what they'll do, but do we have any viable alternatives? Her eyes flicked up, searching for conviction in his gaze. This isn't just my fight, Jake. It never was. I've been running from this legacy, thinking I would prove that I could carve my own path. But if we're going to engage with it, I have to be completely vulnerable. That vulnerability struck a chord. Jake understood the paradox of strength and weakness intertwined. It was clear they would need to confront their pasts, not only to overcome Jonathan but also to redefine themselves. I want you to feel empowered, not crushed by your family's expectations. But if they are connected to this threat, we must find out how far their influence runs and whether they can help. Then we'll go together, she declared, a flicker of resolve igniting her face. I'll reach out tonight. It's time to decipher the past instead of letting it dictate our future. Their resolve was unsteady, but the shift in their conversation bore the weight of their growing partnership. Jake felt the tide turning. He worried less about exposing Emily's truth and more about how it might shape their joint capabilities. As they finalized their plan of action, Jake's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from the anonymous number. You'll find the truth buried deep. Don't say I didn't warn you. A mechanic response swirled through Jake's mind. They had to uncover the truth, whatever it may be, before it became a weapon. I think we need to get to the bottom of this now. This person obviously knows something we don't. He pushed up from the booth, determination propelling him forward. We'll go to your family's connections tonight. Let us see if we can unearth whatever this person is alluding to. We're not going to lose this battle without a fight. Emily smiled slightly, though he could feel the trepidation bubbling beneath the surface. It echoed his own anxiety as they stepped out into the dim street, the outside world casting long shadows against the brick buildings. The path ahead was riddled with uncertainty, yet clarity began to unfurl from the chaos, a joint purpose igniting them in a shared mission. "What if it brings us closer to Jonathan?" Emily asked as they walked, the weight of her past still pressing down on her. "What if we learn things that change everything? Then we'll forge ahead, stronger and smarter." As resolve unified them, Jake felt a budding confidence pulse beneath his fear. He was no longer just working from a place of desperation, he understood the strength found in unity and shared intent. They reached Emily's door, heartbeats quickening as they stood in front of the unknown, in a moment suspended between knowledge and ignorance. Every choice they made would ripple into their futures, forever shifting the dynamic of their fight. "Are you ready?" he asked softly, not fully sure of his own readiness, but willing to leap into the dark unknown. "Both for the truth and for us," she replied, her voice steady yet fragile, creating a bridge of hope between them. The door creaked open, reality awaited behind it, and each knowing glance exchanged felt like the calm before a storm. Just as they stepped inside, a sound echoed from within, a muffled voice speaking words juicier than they could have imagined. Jake's breath caught in his throat. They were about to discover just how entangled their lives had become. Would they unravel the truth, or would it shackle them to a legacy they were trying to escape? Inside the dimly lit foyer, Jake and Emily exchanged hesitant glances, the murmurs of voices echoing like distant memories of a life they each sought to escape. Confidence surged through Jake despite the chaos that lay before them. The choices made would not only define Emily's path but his own growth as a protector and ally. They clung to the belief in their mutual purpose, ready to confront whatever secrets awaited them. As they stepped further into the house, the atmosphere grew heavier, thick with tension and unanswered questions. Jake led the way, a surge of determination propelling him forward as he scanned the opulent surroundings, realizing how starkly it contrasted with his modest life. It was a reminder of the barriers between them, but he was resolute. They would dismantle those barriers together. The muffled voice grew clearer, resonating through the richly decorated hall. He caught snippets of conversation laced with urgency, a mix of names both familiar and foreign. Designated meetings, hidden agendas, plans set into motion, all clashing with the deceptive tranquility of this place. The weight of responsibility pressed on Jake's shoulders. He had stepped into the midst of a storm, and he was ready to weather it. Emily halted suddenly, her hand gripping his arm tighter. They had reached the threshold of what felt like a war room, significant decisions being made behind closed doors. "This is it," she whispered, her voice catching in her throat as they hovered just outside a heavily decorated meeting room. I didn't expect to find them like this." Jake turned to her, searching her eyes for the flicker of resolve he had come to depend on through their trials. "We've come this far. We need to hear what they're saying." He stepped forward, inviting her with a nod, and together they peered through the glass pane. Inside the room, a group of stern faces deliberated hard, their tones tense, loaded with concern. Each word lingered like smoke, choking out any possibility of retreat. "Jonathan is not going to back down easily," one voice echoed, drawing Jake's focus. "He has been threatening litigation against anyone who dares oppose his interests." The intensity of the discussion thrummed in Jake's ears, heightening his senses and igniting a fierce determination to challenge Jonathan's authority. "Then we must be vigilant," another voice replied, steady and commanding, a feminine presence who seemed to hold significant leverage. "If Emily's father decides to retaliate, we need to be prepared to counter his moves. His control over the situation runs deep." Jake felt Emily stiffen beside him, processing the gravity of her family's legacy. In that moment, he understood longing to dismantle her father's grip meant bearing the burden of their collective past. She had to reclaim not only her identity but redefine her destiny. "Are you ready for this?" he whispered, gauging her resolve, intent on supporting her whatever the outcome. With a deep breath, Emily squared her shoulders, determination etching her features. "If this is what I need to confront, then I am." Together, they pushed through the doorway, cutting through the tension as two intruders ready to shift the course of their stories. The murmurs instantly halted, and the room fell to a pregnant silence as heads turned to assess them. "What are you two doing here?" Jonathan's voice sliced through the stillness, irritation leaching from his tone as he loomed at the end of the table. "We're here to put an end to this," Emily declared boldly, her voice rising above the air thick with confrontation. Jake's heart raced. Her admission felt like a beacon of hope illuminated by a flicker of defiance. Jonathan's glare sharpened, cutting into the collective uncertain atmosphere. His surprise masked a deeper agitation. "You think you can just walk in here and change things? Your past doesn't just disappear, Emily. You need to come back under my guidance." Jake stepped forward, steadying himself and channeling all his strength. "No, she doesn't. Emily deserves to draw her own map, to design her own destiny. The old ways, the chains you expect her to carry, are dead." He only half-registered the suspenseful expressions around him, his focus anchored on Emily's resolve and Jonathan's growing rage. "Is that so?" Jonathan countered, the sound dripping with condescension while surveying the room, weighing the incredulity hanging limply within everyone present. "Yes," Emily interjected, emotion swift and powerful. "I'm tired of running from who I am and who I can become. I won't let power dictate my choices anymore." The conviction in her tone surged through Jake, reinforcing his unshakable belief in their partnership. This moment was theirs, not just hers to reclaim but fully theirs to confront. The tension crackled within the room as the echo of her declaration began to dissolve any lingering hesitation. "Even if your history is entangled in my father's, I will fight to craft my identity without fear," she continued, emboldened by her newfound conviction. Collectively, the air seemed to shift, others in the room exchanged glances, perhaps measuring the weight of their loyalties. Each supportive nod served as acknowledgement of the frailty shackling traditions, and Jake sensed a faint stirring in the atmosphere, a ripple hinting at potential alliances. "Let us discuss this like adults," Jonathan scoffed, his tone still brimming with disdain but laced with uncertainty. "But no, there are consequences for defiance. You're playing with fire." "Good," Jake replied, refusing to back down. "Because it's about time someone lit the match. We're standing together against manipulation and control, and no threat is too great." With that proclamation, determination stretched across the faces in the room, revealing the unfolding dynamics that could shift in their favor. Bonds were being formed, new collaborations taking shape amid this revelation. As the conversation evolved, the topic drifted towards Emily's family connections, turning into discussions about strategies and leverage. Allies began to emerge, tensions gradually easing as a coalition formed against Jonathan's oppressive reign. The room buzzed, energized by a collective desire to disrupt the patterns that had dominated for too long. Jake and Emily stood at the forefront of this movement. He felt pride swell within, not only for her courage but for their shared resilience. Together, they had managed to redefine what it meant to confront their pasts and in doing so, carve a new future rich with potential. With the meeting eventually drawing to a close, Jake reached for Emily's hand, intertwining their fingers, a tangible symbol of their newfound partnership. They had ventured through turmoil and emerged stronger, fueled by hope and the audacity to dream. "Are you still ready for this?" he asked, squeezing her hand gently. "More than ever," she said, her eyes sparkling with determination. It was a question without an easy answer, but deep within, they both knew this was just the beginning. Together, they stepped beyond the doors of the meeting room, leaving behind the elements of their old selves. Each stride paired empowerment with purpose, a newfound strength tethering them as they faced whatever obstacles lay ahead. This was their moment, a transformative turning point. They would seize it fully, ready to conquer the waves of resistance that may yet come and carve their path through the tempestuous waters of life. The journey ahead would demand every ounce of courage they've both nurtured. Their own legacy awaited, set to unfold unexpectedly in the realm of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, they felt it deeply: hope is the greatest strength of all. You need to subscribe now to the channel and not miss our next exclusive emotional stories that illuminate the power of personal triumph. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support these incredible journeys of transformation. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this empowering story of overcoming adversity. Don't Wait even one more second to share. Every effort counts.